Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Planko podcast. I'm Max, and today we're in Dubai, and I'm joined by Saahil. Welcome to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
Find you on Instagram at decluttering.coach. Link down below for that. So why Decluttering Coach?
I think it's an accidental decluttering exercise, really. I was on a trip about 4 years ago in Europe with a bunch of friends, some very dear friends. And I was in an environment where I was not being judged. And I couldn't remember the last time I was in such an environment or where I didn't care about what other people thought. I've been wearing, later found out, all these masks through the years. And here I felt free. So I was so overwhelmed by this experience of just being me. And I was probably, the last time I was me was when I was a young child. And I was so overwhelmed that when I came back, I said, why can't I feel like that every day? And I realized, okay, I live in a city or in a world where I am going to be judged, but even if I can get to half of what I felt for those few days, I'm in a much better place than I am today.
Yeah.
And then I asked myself, well, what's stopping me getting there? What clutter is holding me down? And that's where the decluttering process began, because I started identifying things one at a time and saying, right, this is holding me down. Let's work on it, and then propel.
Yeah, where do you think those masks came from, though?
I have a tendency, and I believe this goes back again to my childhood, of always wanting to please others.
Don't we all? We all want to be loved, We all want people to appreciate us. We all want those likes on Instagram and those followers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even without social media, I just wanted to be loved. And I guess that resulted in me doing things for others regardless of how it felt for me or what it meant for me.
Yeah.
Even if I'm tired and someone says, hey, can you help out on something, I'd always be the one who reaches out and says yes. I wouldn't say no very often. So I was focusing more on others than I was focusing on myself.
Okay, so you were selflessly giving without focusing on, first of all, on yourself and making yourself happy, which is what a lot of people do tend to forget these days in our society.
Absolutely.
And when was this trip to Europe?
This was in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it was in May.
Coming up 4 years then.
Yeah, coming up 4 years.
And a lot has changed since then. So what made you decide to have this realization, which is great, but then there's a difference between having a realization and taking action upon it. So when did you decide, I'm going to become the decluttering coach as well?
So what happened was, over the years, I kept doing this exercise on myself. Yeah, I kept chipping away and decluttering from various things.
Like what, for example?
I decluttered from the material world. Yeah. It's a journey. So it's still continuing. It's not that I've done it. But the 4 areas that I focused on were the material world, my body, people, and the mind. And while I was doing this, I started sharing with those who are near and dear. And what happened was they started sharing with a couple of their friends. And then at one event, I had one of these individuals, a fellow named James, come up to me and say, Saahil, listen, what you shared has had a huge impact on my life. Don't keep it to yourself. You need to share with others. And for me, that was kind of my aha moment, right? And I'm a member of this organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, and they have learning events throughout the year. So the following calendar year in the organization, the learning chair came up to me and said, would you like to share your story? So I said, again, I always look for these signs. And I said, yes, absolutely. So I went and I shared my story. It's in a close-knit group. It went very well. They asked me to do another one. That went real well. And then eventually I said, I need to now move from a discussion, because it was more like a roundtable discussion, to a presentation. And being a little finicky, I said it has to look professional. If I made the presentation in PowerPoint, it would have looked awful. So I hired a professional company, and they helped put the presentation together. And luckily for me, I have a very dear friend. She's the owner of Dubai Scholars. They have a school, Clarion School, here in Dubai, and she opened it up for me to use to deliver my presentation. And I put the event on Eventbrite. I had about 35 people come for the first my first speaking engagement that was open to the public, and it went real well. And then I realized, what? This makes sense. It's clearly adding value to people's lives. And kind of the icing on the cake was, a month after that, or a few months after that, I got a phone call from Kenya. And they said, hey, I heard you're the decluttering king. Yeah.
Oh,
So
king.
I said, yeah,
Wow.
king. So I said, look, I'm no king, but I do know a few things about
Okay.
decluttering. And they said, we'd like to invite you to come and speak to our organization. And that, again, was the entrepreneurs organization.
After your very first talk?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And, well, I'd done 2 inside the entrepreneurs organization,
Right.
and this member is from that same organization. Yeah. And then YPO in Kenya found out I was coming and said, hey, we'd like you to come and speak to us as well.
Yeah.
So next thing I know, I'm flying to another country, different continent. They're paying for all expenses and paying me to speak. And I mean, how much more validation do you need?
That's incredible.
And I love this. That's the key here is I'm passionate.
Yeah.
And if I can do this forever and just live every day passionately, what else do you want?
You've already won.
Yeah.
If that's the case. So then give us some insight. How do we declutter? Because what's the difference between decluttering and minimalism? Because we talked about the material side of it. That's an aspect of it. So what are the differences between the two?
I almost feel that minimalism is stage 2, because you first have to get into the rhythm of eliminating and reducing. So you want to get rid of things that you don't necessarily need, and you want to only buy what is absolutely necessary or what you feel is necessary. And once you get into that habit, then you can start looking at, okay, now how do I minimize? Because do I truly need all these things to be happy?
Yeah, I mean, clearly not. I mean, we're in my apartment / studio, and there's a million quantity of things that aren't necessary.
Yeah.
So where do you start?
I came up with this methodology. As I mentioned, you can almost imagine this archery target, right? And the outer circle is decluttering from the material world. And then you move on to the body, and then people. And as you get closer to the bullseye, and then the mind, which is the hardest, and then bullseye basically is helping you to find your purpose by becoming your authentic self. So I started, even though I didn't start with the material world, I always suggest people to start there. So go through your stuff. We all have plenty of things. We've all been to places and seen people with far fewer things than we have, and they're still happy. So then it begs the question, do I really need all this? So I just went through my closet. I thought that was a good starting point. And I divided my things into 3 piles. One was, I wear this often, I want to keep it. And then another pile was, I can't remember the last time I wore this. Clearly it's not required. And the third pile was, I'm on the fence. Do I keep it? Do I give it away? It's got some memory attached to it. So I said, let's just keep it there for now. So now the pile that I want to give away, what made it a lot easier is knowing that it's going to put a smile on someone else's face. It wasn't adding any benefit in my life, but it could add a lot to someone else's.
Yeah, so instead of giving something away, you're giving something to someone. So you're adding value instead of removing value.
Exactly.
That's a very powerful way to approach it. And speaking of clothes, if those of you who are listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, you have a beautiful t-shirt that says friends, not food. I do really like it. It's a good choice. And you said earlier about going back to becoming your authentic self.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you become your authentic self, or do you go back to your authentic self?
So it's removing all the clutter that has been added throughout your life. So it's really removing those layers and then going back to your pure self.
So
when we're born,
the child.
Yeah, when we're born, I mean, look at young children. They're just full of compassion and love. They don't have any masks, unfiltered.
Yeah.
That's what I want to go back to. That's what I believe the world needs to go back to. Because if we live a life with compassion and love, there wouldn't be misuse of trust. The world wouldn't have wars. We wouldn't be looking at each other and comparing and saying, comparing ethnicities or religions or genders or age. We just look at each other as beautiful souls. We wouldn't be mistreating animals and plants, the way that we are today. And we'd live in harmony with one another and the nature and Mother Earth.
Yeah. Were you vegan before you got into decluttering, or was that part of the process?
So funny story. I've been vegetarian my whole life, and dairy was a big part.
Through culture.
Through culture. That's how I was brought up. I mean, dairy was a big part of my diet. So big that every single meal consisted of some form of dairy. And then I used to actually make fun of vegans. I used to say, thank God I am not a vegan, because if I was, I'd shoot myself. And then one day I find out through visiting an integrative medicine specialist that I'm highly intolerant to dairy and eggs.
Because you're not a baby cow.
Because I'm not a baby cow, yeah. So, I mean, ironic, right? So I gave it up.
On the spot? Or
on the spot, because I cared about my health. And I saw the impact. I mean, just to put things in perspective, I used to wake up with a stuffed nose almost every day. I used to feel bloated all the time. And my energy levels were kind of all over the place. The moment I got rid of things that were harming my body, which in this case was dairy and eggs, the bloating stopped. I woke up and I could breathe properly. I slept better. Energy levels were higher. And my body fat went from 24% down to 13% over a period of 6 months. So basically, because I was eating something that was disrupting my system, my gut, the body kept fighting. Imagine all my energy is used to fight as opposed to heal and just to do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Now, I say accidental vegan, and I was always hoping that I'd be able to eat it again. And I said, you know what? I just need to leave it for 1 year. And every now and again, I'd go to a restaurant and go, oh, I really love that cheese fondue or that pizza or that pasta. And I'd cheat. So I'd cheat like once, twice a month. But a year after that, I was reading this book. And when you have all the pieces of the puzzle but one missing, that book was the final piece of the puzzle. And as soon as I put that in my mental puzzle, my 3 core values in life and my purpose in life became solidified. And again, it was one of those aha moments. So my purpose in life is living and sharing non-violence.
It's a great way to live.
Right? And when that was concluded, instantly I said, I'm now vegan for life. I'm never going to buy any animal products. And the only way I will ever do anything that is to do with an animal is if I'm 100% certain that there was absolutely no harm that was, put on the animal itself.
Yeah. And what was that book?
So it's a book called The Jain Way of Life. Now, Jain is a religion that my family follows. But even if you remove the word Jain, because I believe if you look at most religions, they tell you how to live. Yeah. How to live a good life.
And most of those are actually leading towards the same way of life.
Absolutely.
Peace, no harm, kindness towards others.
Exactly. So when I read this book, it just made so much sense. And I said, yes, this is how we should all be living.
Yeah.
With compassion and love, by respecting each other's views and beliefs, by not amassing ridiculous amount of things which we don't really need. Because clutter, in my mind, is also taking up real estate in your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
The more you have, the more you have to take care of as well.
So Jain being a religious aspect, but it also applies to almost the same as a vegan diet, just from the food side of things. But Jains consume dairy.
Yes.
Okay. For what reason?
So from what I understand, I mean, if we look at our forefathers, animals weren't mistreated 4 or 5 generations ago. It is like the movies or in the ads that you see the cow is grazing in the Alps and eating
dancing
the grass.
Salsa,
Yeah. So, from that perspective, when they weren't being fed with hormones and antibiotics and God knows what they're doing to all these poor animals today, they weren't being mistreated. So again, I, as a vegan, I actually consume ghee. Ghee is derived from milk. But the ghee that I get comes from a specific place where they save cows and take care of them till the end of their life. They actually don't sell the ghee. They're just taking care of the cows, and whatever excess is being produced that they have to milk out, and the calf is fed and everything, that is then converted into ghee, and they just use it for their house.
Okay.
But because I know the family, and I said, please, because it's much better than using oil for my food, I said, is it possible that I can get a small quantity as well? And
so they feed the baby calf first, and whatever excess milk is there, then that's what they'll use for the
ghee.
Okay.
And this is a complete loss-making business for them, in the sense that they're doing it as giving back, taking care of the cows, and they take care of the cow till the end of their life.
Yeah.
They're not slaughtered, they're not taken away from their family, they're saved. Right, they try to save as many cows from the streets, from slaughterhouses, etc. And they have, I believe, a few hundred cows now that they're just taking care of on a daily basis.
I mean, it's a really interesting way to look at it, because we look at the food industry today, and that's absolutely 0.00001% of what's going on. and of the dairy industry. But then when you kind of put that idea into people's minds, it blurs that line between what is veganism and what, okay, zero harm to animals, zero exploitation. Is that exploitation? Is it not? It becomes a really, really deep thought process that people get into. And I'm sure that clutters people's minds as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why, people might tell me, oh, this is organic ghee, or this is this is that. I'm like, look, unless if I'm 100% sure of the source, I'm not interested. Yeah. I mean, look, if a cow died naturally and they use some of the cow's products for something, whether it's the skin or otherwise, I have no problem with that. But there should be absolutely no harm, and the life should not be shortened of the animal because of us.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So, and I believe that in veganism, a lot of people have a misconception that you just can't have anything from animals. The reason why it's like that for us today is because we don't trust the source.
Yeah, the source is
right?
evil.
Exactly. But if we're 100% sure that there's absolutely no harm caused to the animal, and we're living in harmony, then it's fine.
And in a hypothetical situation, let's say you die from a natural cause and someone took your body and made a handbag from your skin. Would you be fine with it?
I've been very clear to my family is that when I pass, any part of my body that can be used to add happiness to another person's life, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Now, I think a handbag is probably not the best use, but if they use the eyeballs to give someone else sight, or if any organs could be used to help someone else, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, at least you stay aligned on that. There's no double standards to like, oh no, don't use my body, but I'm going to use another animal's. Yeah. Anyway, so back to decluttering, because we talked a little bit about the material aspect of it, so, and the health side, obviously. But how do you declutter on a spiritual side?
So for me, decluttering on the spiritual side, it was very clear to get the material done with, and the body, which we covered briefly, as well as people. Because, if you want to go within, you need to remove all the external distractions. Because if you're going to have those distractions, if you have bad health, if you have someone who's constantly sucking you dry of your energy levels, it's going to be hard to go deep within. So that's why I always say work on the material first, then get onto the body. And apart from what harms you, it's also important to monitor your essential vitamins and minerals, because I was heavily deficient. I was off the chart on 2 vitamins, and it was dangerously low.
DMB12?
Yes.
Common.
But it was off the chart. It was so low that the doctor who saw me said, you must be running on adrenaline that you're sitting in front of me with the levels of energy that you have. It was that bad. And now that I'm supplementing, I'm trying to get as much as I can from my diet, but whatever I can't, I have to supplement. And my energy levels have completely changed. And then I get on to people, because you have the people you don't see very often, it's okay. But what about those you see on a frequent basis? Someone you work with, someone who's a family member. And it's very important to be able to manage that relationship so it's not affecting you on a day-to-day basis. But once you've accomplished all of those, that's when I went within. And that's for me when I started asking a lot of big questions, and that spiritual angle, right? What is my purpose? How do we live in unison with one another, with everything around us? I mean, one of the trips that I recently made last summer was to Peru, and it was amazing to watch how the people there cared for, and they call Mother Earth Pachamama, right? For instance, if they open a bottle of water, they'll first drop a few drops to feed Mother Earth before they drink themselves.
They do it with beer as well.
Really?
Yeah.
So they would do things like that. There were recycling bins everywhere. They used materials that would, compostable. I mean, they really cared about Mother Earth. And what I loved over there was when I went to the Amazon rainforest. Because when I was there, I saw the circle of life in perfect harmony. And then I came back and I said, my goodness, what are we doing?
Yeah, we live in chaos.
It hit me that if the entire human race were to disappear, the world would keep spinning and it'd be perfect. If anything, it might improve.
Yeah, for sure.
But if we remove any major species, it disrupts the circle of life and it could be catastrophic. So when you start thinking along those lines and you're more aware of what's happening around you, that's when I found I started getting a lot more spiritual, because it's not just about me, it's about the collective, it's about the energy bodies, all of us around each other, and working together to lift each other up, as opposed to, as you said, chaos.
Yeah. It is interesting because I feel there is definitely a move nowadays in our society towards spirituality. A lot of people don't like to talk about religion because religion have a bit of a bad reputation through media, through press, but it feels like people want to get reconnected again with Earth and with the environment, with what's around us, because we do feel we're in these concrete jungles where there's no connection to nature anymore, and everyone wants to reconnect. So how can we reconnect with Mother Earth?
So look, I mean, if you're fortunate enough and you're able to get out to nature in its purest form, obviously that's the best. I mean, I was very lucky that I was in the Amazon rainforest, and prior to that we were climbing a mountain in the Andes. So we were living in tents and no people around, no houses, nothing, right? I mean, it's as raw as it gets. And it's amazing when you feel the energy of Mother Earth and you connect, you realize that this is more important than where I am today. And I need to preserve this and make sure that this doesn't get destroyed. But if you're not able to get out to these places on a regular basis, if you're living in a villa, step out in your garden. Sit on the grass. Feel the grass. Feel the trees. Feel the flowers. Feel the plants. If you don't live in a villa and you live in an apartment, there must be a park nearby. Go to the park. Sit there. And just unobstructed. No book. Definitely no phone.
Yeah.
And just sit and observe and just enjoy and listen to the sounds of the birds. Every morning I'm an early riser. I'm outside. I'm watching the sunrise. I hear the birds chirping, and it's magical. It just grounds you and connects you, rather than waking up, alarm, run, rush, get ready, work, come back, socialize, bed, and repeat.
Yeah, I mean, I find that interesting because I recently got quite big into meditation and about that mindfulness and about bringing yourself into that moment of just being alive, being aware of what's wrong, what you're feeling, what's actually going on inside your body, what's the thoughts actually going through your head, instead of being just absorbed by what society is throwing at us, the amount of information that we consume on a daily basis. I don't think our minds are made for that quantity of information, of Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias that are out there. It is just non-stop information being thrown in our faces. And that's something that I've tried to do over the past month, is to declutter, in a sense, from social media. And obviously I've taken a break away from the podcast to give myself a bit of time to focus on me a little bit. So I apologize to listeners that the episodes haven't been quite as frequent as they were last year, but I will get back into it. So how do you balance trying to obviously build a social media platform now through the Decluttering Coach? Plus you're a family man as well. I mean, everything you say about decluttering, the material aspect of it and all that, it sounds very easy for like a single guy living by himself, in a one-bedroom apartment and no liabilities and no compromises to make with children, partner or whatever. Yeah. So how do you balance all of that with a family life as well?
So the first thing I do is I have a morning routine. I think that's very important. Whether you're single, not, family, whatever stage you're in life, I used to find that I didn't get time to myself. Because I'd wake up, get the kids ready, drop them to school, work out, breakfast, office, come back, time with the kids, time with the wife, perhaps some socializing, go to bed, repeat. Yeah. Where was me time? We're always doing, but we're not being.
So what's that? Right?
We're always doing, we're not being. And we're always looking for what next to do rather than just being. And I said, I need alone time. So I said, first, I need to ensure that I get a fixed amount of time to myself. So I started waking up earlier. I had to get up at 6 for the kids. So now I get up at 4:45. And 5 to 6 is me time. That's where I do my sun salutations, just to open up the body, stretch, get the blood flowing because I've been lying down for so many hours. I then move on to reading. I don't read anything on the phone. No phones allowed in the morning. I actually don't touch my phone for the first 3 hours of the day. And no newspaper, because it's predominantly negative news. No magazines, none of that. There's a pre-selected book that I'm reading on a daily basis. And then when I finish it, I move on to the next one. Once I'm finished with my reading, I get on to some meditation. Why meditate? Just to slow the mind down. You know, people say that you want to stop your mind. I don't believe it's possible to stop your mind, but it's just allowing thoughts to flow and just slowing it down and centering yourself.
Do you do guided meditation, or is it?
So I opted not to do guided meditation just because I didn't want to get into the habit of getting used to it and then not being able to meditate without.
Right.
So it took me longer to get into the habit, but it was worth it in the end, because now wherever I am, I'm able to meditate.
Okay.
And then after the meditation, I get into journaling. And in journaling, I use a planner, and the first 3 things I write are, what am I grateful for? You know, I find that, especially when I do a lot of these mountain treks, I try to go once a year onto the mountains to summit, and you really appreciate things like a bed, running water, a warm room, right? I mean, we take it for granted.
Of course, yeah.
So what am I grateful for? I write that down. Then I write down what am I excited about. Then I have my daily affirmation for the day. Currently, I'm writing, I have the power to change my life for the better, to get it right and get the desired results. So I'm in control. Stop those days where I'm saying, oh, it's his fault that I'm in this situation, or her fault, or my boss, or my son, or all excuses. I'm in charge of my own destiny, in charge of my future. I'm not going to blame others. I have the power. I need to take action.
Well, you do a lot early in the morning. I think you achieve more in that hour and 15 minutes that you have by yourself than I usually achieve on a full daily basis.
Well, then after that, I do forgiveness. Because, I find that I want to be completely clean. And, some people even do that in the evenings. Sometimes they do it in the evenings as well. And I forgive all living beings in the universe. And I ask them to forgive me if I've done anything.
Do you forgive yourself?
Absolutely. You have to.
Because I find we're always the hardest on ourselves. I wouldn't say everyone's good at it, but most people are better at forgiving other people than to forgiving themselves. We're always our harshest critics. Yeah.
But, it's about changing perspective. Instead of asking, why me? How about asking yourself, what is this teaching me? The moment you ask that instead, then it's, okay, I went through something. What did I learn? And how is that making me a stronger person moving forward? Yeah. Now, repeating the same mistake again and again, then you have to question yourself. But otherwise, it's you change perspective, and it goes from a negative to a positive.
Yeah, perspective is everything. If you choose to, you could choose to decide that your life is a disaster and a mess, and you failed at everything you ever did, or you can look at it that I've learned so much, and I've done great things, and I can achieve more great things.
Absolutely.
So how do you find that motivation? You set your alarm 4:45 every day, or do you take a weekend?
No, the weekends are a little different because the kids don't need to wake up for school.
Yeah,
so
of course,
the weekends are a little bit more flexible, but the weekdays are early.
So how do you get yourself out of bed when that alarm goes off? Because your body can't want to get out of bed at 4:45 in the morning.
Oh, it's the favorite part of my day.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I don't do my morning routine, the day is not as effective. Right. And I'm not in as good a place as I would be otherwise.
So you literally bounce out of bed at 4:45?
I am super excited.
Wow.
Yeah. And the key is to ensure you get enough sleep. So I sleep early as well.
Makes sense.
I try to get into bed. I say try. It's not a good word. Yoda always told us, do or do not, there is no try. I get to bed around 10 o'clock. Yeah. So that gives me, enough sleep for my body. And I'm well rested. Yeah.
I was having a really interesting conversation about the word try, actually.
Yeah.
And I always thought that trying is something positive. You're going to give it a shot. You're going to give it a try. You're going to attempt. But this person explained very clearly that the word try is actually negative.
Yes.
Because if you try, you're already setting yourself in the idea that you're going to fail.
And that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah, I tried. I didn't do it. But, whereas if you start with that positive mindset that I'm going to do this, I'm not going to try. I could say, okay, I'm going to try waking up at 4:45 tomorrow morning. For sure, that alarm's going to go off and I'm going to wake up at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
But then if you go with the positive mindset, okay, I'm going to do this, then you're already committed to making it happen.
And that's a very valid point, because waking up actually starts in the evening. It's, as you said, the mindset. I am going to wake up at this time, and making sure that you're going to bed early. So you've already prepared yourself for a good morning. If you go to bed late, or if you say, I'm going to try, as you just mentioned, it's not going to work out too well.
Yeah. Obviously, I met you once before at an event, like 6 months ago. We had a very interesting conversation, and you struck me as someone very in control of their life, very positive, great outlook, and we had a really good talk that day. And how do you maintain that positive mindset? Are you genuinely positive all the time, or is it like, I'm going to fake it till I make it?
Yeah. Well, it's a combination of two things. Again, it's about the perspective that I mentioned. You can look at everything with two different or multiple lenses. So you can choose to look at it from a negative angle or a positive. I mean, even when I look at people, everyone was, probably still is, a pure and loving, compassionate individual. No matter what they say or do, if I try to look for that, I'm always going to see them from a positive angle, right? And everyone has good in them. I fail to believe that there's someone who's 100% rotten. It just doesn't exist. So I'd rather look for that 1% or 10% or 30% goodness in people and everything around me. And the second is, when I started this decluttering journey, every time I decluttered something, the positive effect was so great, it gave me the momentum to continue. Because people say, wow, in the 4 years you've given up this, you don't do this anymore. You're not out drinking, you're not life must be boring. And I said, on the contrary, I've never felt better. My relationships are stronger than they've ever been. I'm more focused than ever. I'm getting results that I couldn't think that were unimaginable for me before. I used to live a day where I was reactive. I didn't have enough hours in the day. And today, thanks to all these things, I'm getting my work done a lot more effectively. And I have time. I have time to then work on myself, whether it's reading, reading some articles online that are about improving oneself, listening to podcasts, etc., etc. So it's a combination of the two. It's finding the good in things and taking action that gives you the momentum to keep moving forward in a positive angle.
And what do you think's holding people back from that? Because like you say, most people are reactive, chasing. They are submissive towards life. We're just accepting the consequences of whatever happens,
I find people are too busy. That's the real honest answer. I give you an example. A friend of mine, single, I'd say something, I don't have the time. He got married, still didn't have the time. Had one, then 2 kids, still didn't have the time. Clearly he made time for the wife and the children, otherwise they would have all left him by now. So people just have this mindset that I'm just busy. I feel people sometimes are just running around like headless chickens. And rather than focusing on the inward journey, they're focusing so much on the outward journey. And all I tell people is take that first step. Take that first step, see what the results are like, and then the rest will be magic.
Yeah, you talk about your transformation over the past 4 years, but it wasn't all of it overnight. It has been a journey. It's been daily, you working towards that goal, slowly and steadily. Whereas I think we always tend to overshoot things. Like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to completely declutter my kitchen. I'm going to get rid of everything in my wardrobe that I don't need. And I'm going to go to the gym, run the 10K and only eat salad.
And you set yourself up for failure.
Yeah, completely.
Right? And that's what I tell everyone when I do my talks. I say, listen, I'm sharing with you my journey over 4 years. Don't think you can do this in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Pick one item in each of these categories and do it in this order. And watch the magic happen.
So break it down into baby steps in a sense. And
absolutely.
Get that ball rolling, get the avalanche going with And the thing is, when we fail at these things, we become very tough with ourselves as well, don't we? And we struggle to move on, we struggle to forgive. It's like back to veganism. A lot of people say, I tried being vegan for a day and I couldn't
for a day
or for a month or whatever. And then they're like, I failed, so I give up and I could never do it again or ever try again. So,
but did you really do it wholeheartedly? That's the question.
Yeah, my question is always, why did you do it? If you did it because you thought you were going to lose 10 kg in a week, then obviously it's never going to happen. If you do it from your heart, from an ethical perspective, and you from the point of view of the victims, then it becomes a lot easier. And from the environment and your own health, like if you take that as a whole, then it's extremely simple to do.
Yeah, I always find if the reason is bigger than yourself, it's always easy.
Yeah. Yeah, once you find that true purpose of something beyond the navel of yourself, and that individual, closed-minded thing that we do get very much locked up into. And so even if we do fail at these things, other people fail. We have expectations of others as well. People rarely deliver on the expectations that we have. How do we forgive ourselves and how do we forgive them?
So let's start with forgiving other people, right? I had an experience back in 2009, and people said time allows you to heal. I say that's absolute garbage. It just suppresses. It's just pushing that feeling deeper and deeper inside. But every now and again, you hear a song, you see an image, you hear the name, you might even see the person, and boom, triggers back. So time does not heal. That's absolute bull, from my experience. Now, what I had to do was, and I realized, and I read this wonderful book by Michael Singer called The Untethered Soul, that this negative emotion is just churning inside of my body. And as you know, when we're having a negative emotion, we're releasing certain type of hormones, and when we're positive, we're releasing certain type of hormones. We certainly want more of the positive hormones in our body, not the other way around. So it's almost like you're eating yourself up because you're not releasing. So I realized I had to face this head on, right? I had to just grab the bull by the horns and say, right, let's do this. And I then went through this process of writing a letter of forgiveness. Even though I was done wrong, I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I still decided that I am going to forgive, even though I was the one who was done wrong. And what happened was magic, because it's almost that this energy went through my arm onto this pen and transferred onto this piece of paper. Now, in my case, after doing that, I typed it up and I sent the email. I went that extra step. I had no expectations, but when I wrote that letter of forgiveness, it's like this huge weight was lifted off my shoulder.
So it was just the release of actually putting it down without the expectation of the person reading it, without the expectation of the person replying.
If you don't want to send it, that's fine. Write the letter.
Yeah.
Write the letter. Get it out of you, because you're killing yourself from inside. And the moment I finished that, I said, okay, now let's work on me. Because as you mentioned, we are always harsh on ourselves. And I came to realize, I said, again, it was about changing perspective. It was not asking the question, why me? It was, what did this teach me? And the moment I changed my perspective, I said, okay, this is what I learned from this experience. I just have to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And by being aware of it, the chances of it happening again are very rare. If I wasn't aware and I didn't go through this process, I probably would have made the mistake again.
Yeah.
So it took me 9 years. The incident happened around 2009. 2018, I wrote the forgiveness letter. And now what's happened is I go through this forgiveness practice more frequently. Okay. So even recently, where I had, in the last couple of years, I had someone betray my trust. Instead of taking 9 years, I was able to work on it and resolve it internally within a couple of months.
Did you go through the same process of writing it down again, or was it a process?
No, absolutely.
Different? Okay,
absolutely. You have to have a methodology of transferring that negativity out of you onto another medium.
I really like this, because a lot of people do say, time heals everything. You'll figure it out, and everything happens for a reason, which obviously can believe in certain aspects, but especially when you go through traumatic things like that, people are like, just wait it out, But I do agree that, everyone has been through trauma, and everyone does know that it does fester inside you, and it scars you, and kind of makes me think about how we say everyone has baggage.
Yes.
Would you say you've relieved yourself of that baggage, or would you say that baggage remains?
No, absolutely relieved it. And that's all about, everyone says I'm living in the present, but I remember I was watching the speaker one time, and he was on stage and he grabbed a chair and he was dragging it around with him. And he said, we all say we're living in the present, but we're carrying around this baggage from our past. And we have a choice. We can keep doing that, and that's going to slow us down from moving forward, or we can let go.
Yeah.
But let go is by addressing it, not by forgetting it. You can't, time does not heal. It's like putting a plank of wood over a pothole. Over time, it's going to crack and someone's going to fall again. You know, it's not the solution. You need to fill the hole.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because that goes into a whole mental health aspect.
Yeah.
Of if you don't, because it's hard to talk about these things to people, to get, especially if it comes from a relationship aspect and you've been betrayed, you've been hurt, to talk to someone, anyone, is hard. But if you can heal that by yourself through putting it down onto paper and just having that realization, okay, this is what happened, this is how I feel, actually visualizing it in front of you and be like, okay, this is where I am now, and then you can actually move on from it.
And it's very important that it doesn't matter what happened. And I did not blame them in any way in that letter.
It's not like hate mail.
No, it was not that I was done wrong. I actually apologized and asked for forgiveness. And I wrote at the end that I said, all this was not worth it. Because there was a very strong friendship that is no more.
Well, okay. I mean, that's, do you talk about this in your talks as well? Or is it you're keeping it mainly to the...
No, I do talk about it because I think if I open up and I'm vulnerable, I'm hoping that gives the courage for other people to open up and be vulnerable as well.
I think relatability is what's important. People like the authenticity. Because I think we've lost that nowadays. When you look at social media, you look at what's portrayed, what people are putting out there. They're putting out highlights. They're putting out, this is me on my greatest day. But where are you when you're not feeling so great?
Yeah.
You know, and I think people really yearn to feel that human connection again. And that's what I do love about my podcast is that we'll sit down, yes, there are cameras, yes, there are microphones, but we'll have an authentic, genuine conversation about things.
Absolutely.
And to have that human connection is really powerful. And so we were talking about, you've had now a few speaking events, and I've been following you on social media. You've been popping up interviews all over, you know, quite a few of those. So what are your plans for the future?
Couple of things. So 2020 is going to be a turning point. I'm just making people aware that I speak. I'm not a salesperson kind of guy. I always believe that you set your intention and then the universe kind of guides you and just, it joins mutual energies together. And I feel that's how we're here today as well. So I've started writing my book.
Excellent.
Yeah, I finished the first chapter. The working title is Reflections. The subtitle is The Art of Decluttering to Liberation. So that should be out this year. I'm very excited about that.
Great.
And following the book, we'll probably put together an online course because there are people who want to know more about decluttering and what steps to take, and they may not have access to me physically. Yeah. So if I put together an online course, which they can manage in their own time, this will then help them to declutter.
I mean, that's why I brought you here, to pick your brains, for free. So that's it's a great thing about podcasts. You get to meet people and ask them questions and pretend it's for something else, but it's actually just for yourself. Yeah. It's a great way to do things. And there's a demand in businesses as well for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So from what angle do they bring you in?
So, when you declutter the material world, you have a much cleaner space. There's better energy flow in the office. When you declutter the body, you're more fit, you're more energized, you're more focused, you're getting stronger results, fewer sick days. When you declutter people, it's not just about removing people from your life. People think decluttering people means get rid of, right? But it's actually understanding which ones are draining you of your energy, distancing yourself temporarily, working on yourself and understanding why that's taking place, and dealing with it internally so that you can have them back in your life without them affecting you. Because I always say, people say, oh, I'm in control. But if you did something wrong to me and every time someone mentions your name or you come in front of me and I lose my emotionally I go haywire, who's in control? You're in control. Because every time you pop up, I can't control my emotions.
Yeah, that's true.
So by working on self, I'm now then allowing you back in my life and you won't affect me. So again, it's, that gets rid of a lot of office politics. And then finally, when you declutter the mind, wow, I mean, your relationships with your colleagues, your confidence in self, everything just improves. So overall, your productivity is just
you're
shooting up.
You're bringing value, like you said, on the productivity side, operational side, workspace. So you can actually really add value to a company and save them money, time, HR, time, people's health, days off. Yeah, it's an incredible thing that you're doing. And I know you're a busy man and you've got a lot on your schedule, so I will wrap this up soon. If there's one last thing you could say to the listeners out there that you've piqued their interest on the subject of decluttering, and they want to get started, and they want to get started today, and they're excited, and they're going to set their alarm at 4:45 tomorrow morning, or whatever works for them and on their schedule, what would you suggest to these people?
Great. So I'm going to give you 4 things, one in each area that I've covered. So from decluttering the material world, go through your stuff, pick a number, something that's achievable, and remove those items today and give them away to someone who can benefit. Using the KonMari method that Mary Kondo has made extremely famous, thank the item for what it's given to you in your life, the happiness, and then give it to someone else who can benefit. Decluttering the body, I always tell people, get a blood test done. Find out how you are on the essential vitamins and minerals, because if something is lacking, that's going to affect how you operate on a daily basis. Decluttering people, everyone's been hurt by someone. Be brave, get that pen out, write the letter of forgiveness. And then finally, for decluttering the mind, I would say, get into a morning routine. It doesn't have to be what I'm doing, it doesn't have to be at the same time, but something you do every single morning that's a routine, that's positive, that works for you, that you can implement in your life. Even if it's only for 15 minutes a day or half an hour a day. However you wish to do it, but get into a morning routine. Because when you get into a positive momentum, even if someone sends you an email that you don't like, or a message, or someone says something, you get knocked down a little bit, but you're still on a high. If you wake up and the first thing you do is pick up your phone and you see a negative message, boom, you're underground. And then just to come back up, it might take the whole day, and that day has just been written off completely. So get into some sort of morning routine that gets you on a high, full of energy every single day. So those are my tips in each of those categories.
Well, I'm definitely going to start applying them. Saahil, thanks for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I look forward to having you back closer maybe to the release of your book, and then you can give us some more insights when that's coming out. But anyway, it's been such a pleasure. Guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Plank Code podcast with Saahil. Once again, at decluttering.coach on Instagram. Do follow him. Do let us know what you thought of this episode. We'd love to hear from you on the usual channels, and have a great day. Saahil, once again, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
That's the year that they're saying's our last, unless we make a change now when we gotta be fast. But first we gotta make a shift in what we put in our mouths. These silly billies thinking vegans eating grass on the ground. We talking fast food, yo, it's burgers and fries. And it used to hurt the earth and the birds in the sky, but now they making it with plants, and it's so much better, cause the animals are safe. No more changes in the weather. We better act fast, cause the ice barely freezing. The world's changing quick, so welcome to Planet Vegan. Woo! Damn, man, can you feel that? This place is getting hot. If we want to save the world, it'll take some work. If you want to make it better, then take off your shirt, wave it around your head, and jump into the streets. The revolution starts now. Can you feel its heartbeat? If we want to save the world, man, we better be quick, cause we're killing all the piggies and the cows and the chicks. And I gotta be honest, I ain't a fan of our fate, but we can make a change now, and it starts on our plates. All around the world, it's a brand new dance. What you're making out of bodies, yeah, we're making out of plants. We gotta save the pigs and the fishes in the sea, so hold on to your pants, Planet Vegan soon to be. There's a change up in the system, I can feel it in the air, but it benefits us all, there's no need to be scared. We're gonna change the world and we'll do it in a day, so don't fight the future, Planet Vegan's here to stay. If we wanna save the world, it'll take some work. If you wanna make it better, then take off your shirt, wave it around your head, and jump into the streets. The revolution starts now. Can you feel its heartbeat? If we wanna save the world, man, we better be quick, cause we're killing all the piggies and the cows and the chicks. And I gotta be honest, I ain't a fan of our fate, but we can make a change now and it starts on our plates.
Massive forest fires have once again decimated the Californian coastline.
Iceland just held a funeral for the first glacier ever lost in the country's history due to warming weather patterns.
Europe was just hit with the hottest temperatures in recorded history.
Thousands of people are already dying every year from climate change-related issues, and this number is expected to rise exponentially over the coming decade.
Okay, this apocalyptic nightmare's about to be real. Forest fires, oceans flooding, let it fill you with fear. A billion refugees running across the borders in pain, and they're drowning while you're saying you're refusing to change. Slaughterhouses filled with bodies and they're letting out screams, but you're saying it's a lie, that it's only a dream. Let me tell you something, man, the nightmare is real, and you're paying for it daily with your supersized meal.